Right, a little bit about myself. So my name is Björn Hartong. I work for Zurich Insurance. I can't sell you any insurance because I don't know how to calculate the premium. I work for the team that is involved in risk engineering. So we help our customers getting insight in the things that is going wrong in their supply chain. And hopefully we can then propose some improvement points. I have colleagues that are very good in heavy lift, cargo and stuff. My specialty is more supply chain security. My background is freight forwarding. I've worked for various Swiss freight forwarding companies, and prior to that I did the supply chain security for Sony in Europe. Right. So actually people always say security and insurance, they are costs. And as Thorsten also mentioned this morning, they're not. They're actually business enablers. Security should help you get a supply chain which actually make sure the goods arrive from A to B and you're able to sell them and you get the money for them. And insurance is there that in case you do have an issue, that at least you have something in the hand which you can get your money back, or at least a part of it, because insurance does not cover everything you've lost. But I'll come back to that later. So what do we use within Zurich? So we have a certain methodology that we use. When we try to look at a company, we try to look at the exposures, which is basically the thing you want to insure with us. So you want to insure a shipment going from A to B. That's the exposure. That's the amount of money. Insurance companies always talk about money. So if you want to ship 1 million from A to B, we look at it. We look what kind of million it is, because if it's a big and heavy machine, it probably won't get stolen. They get back paying, the criminals, so they don't like it. If it's a few pallets of iPhones, yeah, it's very likely that there are a few people interested. If you're shipping precious metals, for sure they would like to have it. So we also look at the hazards. So what's actually then, what could potentially happen? It's sort of a scenario writing. Do we have people showing up with guns? If yes, do they use it? In South Africa, yes, they would use it. In Italy, less likely, because if you use a gun in Italy, your penalty, if you would ever be caught by the police and you would get up in court, you would spend longer time in jail. So the Italians just like to threaten with the guns, and in South Africa they shoot with them. So we also look at the controls. What do you have in place to avoid these hazards actually taking place? And that's sort of, you come at a balance, and that's where we as an insurance company say, okay, yeah, we like it, or you could potentially improve a little bit on your side. When the improvements comes to security, you need money. And that's why I'd like to give you some help with, having been on the shipper side, freight forwarder side, and now on the insurance side. I'm hoping that I can give you some ideas where you could find some money in the company to fund your programs. So if we look at risk management, security, insurance, business interruption, whatever title they give it, in the end you're trying to avoid a large financial loss to your company, and you're not the only one that's trying to avoid that. You're doing it from a security point of view, the insurance manager's doing it from an insurance point of view, and people that take care of business interruption, they have a more long-term view, but they also want to avoid losses. So at least you have already 3 departments, hopefully fighting the same fight. So if you start looking at what are the risks and what has to be covered, it's very good to figure out who has the risk. Because we've had companies that say, yeah, my supply chain is very well managed, all my suppliers deliver to me. And then you go to the procurement department, and the procurement department says, nah, it's cheaper if we pick it up ourselves. But they don't tell the logistics people. So you have a risk. So it's very good to figure out who has the risk. Is it you? Is it the party selling the stuff from you? Is it a third-party storage location where you've put your cargo in a storage location? And how is it managed? So if you have insurance policies, there are multiple of them. The most used versions which you would come across in logistics, are either called a property insurance. So they basically insure anything which is on a property, like a building, or in a building. And then you have a marine policy. Marine is the old word, because we started insuring vessels. Now you have all the other modes of transport, but marine is basically logistics insurance. Everything you move from A to B, and it could be stored into a building. So that makes it a bit more tricky. But it is imperative to figure out which one it is. And it has to do with own deductibles. The logistics insurance premiums have very low own deductibles, so that's your own risk. So if you lose something, you might have to pay a few €1,000. Property has own deductibles which go up into millions. So if you lose something which is insured under a property policy, you're screwed because you have a lot of own money involved in it. And then you have to also figure out what is covered or what is not covered. You might have an insurance policy, but certain things might be excluded. So for instance, if it's white collar fraud, so by senior management, it's most likely excluded from your insurance policy because that's your senior management. They should be the trustworthy party in your company. You could have inclusions, but also exclusions. So it could be that a company says, yeah, everything is insured, except if you start moving these kinds of commodities in these countries, and then we say we don't want it. They are most likely probably on page 50 of your insurance policy in very small print. But you should know about them. The reason why you should know about them from a security point of view, because what's ever excluded from the insurance policy is your issue. Because they expect that you are the security guy, you fix the parts which they for sure have a risk of not being financially compensated by the insurance company. And then also another thing you have to keep in mind, in the insurance policies there is a maximum insured value. And the maximum insured value does not always meet with the maximum stuff you can put into a truck. And particularly if you have very small theft-sensitive items, you could probably put a few pallets in the truck and then you have reached your limit. The logistics people will say, the truck's half empty. We could stuff some more in it. Then the truck gets stolen and tada, the insurance company says you have exceeded the maximum insured value. Basically, you made the target even better for the criminals, so you're not getting anything. So that's why it's also very good as a company to figure out what is my maximum insured value per transport, per location, because that is something you need to know. And trust me, logistics people try to cut corners by saving money, and they sometimes forget this on purpose. One thing you need to understand, and this is vital, and I would recommend anybody in security working there, you need to understand Incoterms. And Incoterms are the terms and conditions in which companies work together. I'm selling you something to you, and we agree that it's being sold under the following conditions. The first one is, I sell it to you, you come and pick it up. X works. So the moment you leave my front door, I'm out. It's your issue. That's an easy one. And then the last one is DDP. I deliver it all the way to your door, and I'm fully responsible until it gets there and you sign off. Well, we have customers that came to us and said, our procurement has a great idea. They're saving money, we're now going to buy X works. I said, great, so you are buying X works? Yeah. So do you know that you then have to pick it up from the customer and from your supplier, and you're fully responsible for the entire supply chain? No, they didn't tell me that. Well, good luck. And then there are a few places in the middle which are, in all honesty, making it a bit worse. Because that means somewhere from the supplier until your door, there has to be a handover point. That means somewhere in the supply chain, you have to figure out, is everything there? Is it still in one piece? And who's going to do the check? We have customers that sell, they have these thinking things like free on board, and then they name a port in China. Okay, so somebody is responsible for bringing it to the port, and after the port, you're responsible. But there's nobody there checking on your behalf. So that's an interesting one when you have a claim. So if you come into any of these Incoterms, it's good to figure out, and these pictures make it easy. It's Mickey Mouse language for senior management. But they give you an idea of who's at risk and where the financial transfer is. So also read the contracts, because it could be that contracts have changed. As mentioned, procurement people, when they switch suppliers, it doesn't always mean that they take over the same Incoterms they had with the previous supplier. Or if sales, they try to do something different as well. Afterwards, we've got many customers that said afterwards, it's been going on like this for years, and procurement made a change, and now all of a sudden they look at me as security manager, I should have prevented it. Yeah, but nobody told me I had to. Well, that's why you need to have a rather good relation. So how is financial risk then managed? The reason why I want to tell you is because if you understand this, you know where you can find people that can help you or where you could find potential budget. As mentioned, some of the terms you might see is own deductible. I think anybody understands what the own deductible is. It's the part the insurance company does not pay. These could be a few €100. We also have customers that have deductibles of several hundred thousands. So any loss below this own deductible is your own money, which means that from a security point of view, that is something you have to protect, because the CFO does not like having a lot of losses where he has to pay out the own deductible, or it's not being paid out actually, it's loss of the company. So that's pure loss of profit. So if you can avoid any claims which will pay out money out of the own deductible, that's already a good motivation to build up a security program. Then there is a captive. Captive basically means your company has decided to play insurance company themselves. So instead of giving money to the actual insurance company, they keep certain money in the pocket, and then they say, our captive is 10 million. So basically any losses which happens to 10 million, it's still our own money. We don't pay insurance premium for it. It has several benefits. One of them is a huge tax advantage, and you pay less insurance premium. It works great, but you gamble a little bit because, of course, you take into consideration, I don't lose 10 million. If you are working for a company with a captive and you know the amount of money, that is something you can play around with. And if you're having meetings with senior management and say, by the way, I'm not protecting the fact that we might pay more insurance premium, it's our own money. And particularly CFOs, and those are the people that will probably give you your budgets, are really open for such a discussion where you're actually protecting their money. We see it with a lot of American-based companies. They really like captives, and they have captives going up to huge amounts of money. So from that point of view, it could be insured. As mentioned, the insured value, you have insured values per incident, per year. It could be per conveyance. We have customers, you might have a conveyance like you could have, or maybe only maximum $20 million on a vessel, on one ship. It then becomes a bit challenging when your freight forwarder decides to make a combination and put more cargo on the vessel than you want to. So that is something which could be of interest for an insurance manager. So if you know these values, you can ask the logistics people, does it ever happen that we just have a bit more on the vessel than we should? Or do we actually have more in the warehouse than we should? We've seen massive increases in COVID situation where a lot of many companies asked to increase the value per storage location. Because all the goods were delayed, they finally came to Europe, all the warehouses were overfull, and then they realized, I actually don't have enough insurance. So the first solution is you ask the insurance company, would you give me more coverage? Sure, they'll send you an invoice, you have more insurance coverage. Except when the warehouse burns down, you've lost more goods. So there's a risk to it. Will you get compensation? But I'll come back later. You will only get the money which is the worth of the goods, not the profit that you've lost. As mentioned, there are exclusions. Currently, a lot of exclusions are related to Mexico. South Africa is also high on the list for exclusions. So there's limits on transport. Certain areas are excluded, certain products are excluded. Why? Because they are at high risks, and the insurance companies don't really like risks. You can also have limitations. That's currently very frequently in the Latin America region, where they basically say you can only put a few $100,000 in the truck, and that's it, no more. Which is for the logistics people a nightmare, because it's like 75% empty. But yeah, otherwise people show up and get it. And then there are warranties and requirements, and the warranties and requirements could be that the insurance company says, yes, you can move these kind of products. However, there are certain requirements. You cannot drive during nighttime, you cannot park, you cannot stay in the weekends. I have an example. We had a customer. It was a company buying PlayStation 5 from Sony, and the company was responsible for moving the products out of the port in Brazil, in Sao Paulo. So we told the customers, listen, we get it, it's high risk. Once it's in the port, it's okay-ish, but you are not allowed to leave before 7 o'clock in the morning, because it's a guaranteed loss. We put it on writing, it was part of the insurance policy. You are insured from 7 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon, from Monday to Friday, no parking, direct movement. The truck driver showed up at 4 in the morning. He was robbed at 4:05 in the morning, and they found the truck at 4:30 in the morning, empty. And they came, yeah, we had a loss. Can we get money? Nope, sorry. So that was a very unhappy customer. And then the security manager that had the issue, all logistics managers were also called. Why did we have such a screw up? Yeah, that they had no control over the process. Everybody was aware of the security requirements and the features that we had implemented. Nobody actually filled up. So how would it look like? Normally you have maybe external insurance coverage, you have a captive program, and you have an own deductible. What we generally see with the own deductible, if you have a group structure in the company, the own deductible is pushed out to the business units. Basically, corporate says, yeah, the own deductible is for the business units to play around with, and if they have a loss, don't come to corporate, eat it yourself. Which is a very nice structure, because it means you have a partner opposite of you who is responsible for a business unit or a site, and he knows every loss which is in the own deductible, he has to pay directly out of his own P&L, which is a very good motivation factor if you want to implement certain security features and you say, you know, if we do this, you might have less of a chance of an incident which is directly has to be paid by you because it's in the own deductible. So if you play around with these ideas and you know security and you know a little bit about insurance and finance, you can convince people easier to give you certain money for your plans that you want to implement. This is a very difficult thing to understand. Even I don't really get it. But this is called a captive. So captive basically means a company can decide, I want to create my own insurance company. That's called the captive of company X. And I want to include or exclude certain items. So it could be that we decide as an insurance company, we don't want to insure, I don't know, $5 million truckloads of iPhones in Mexico, because that's a high risk. It could be that the company then decides, I think it is in my interest to do that, because I have a huge security program in place. I will run it in my own insurance company under the captive. So basically, you have the external insurance company, which is us maybe, and you have the internal insurance company, which is called the captive. They might set rules. Same applies if you know the rules of the captive, you can go out to the logistics people and say, these are the guidelines which we have to follow, otherwise we are screwed, we lose a lot of money. It's not really that you want to scare the people away, or you want to scare them by presenting scenarios, but if you can add money to it, if you can combine multiple departments in the same structure of why you need certain security requirements, you have a better chance that all of these departments are actually in favor of your program. And we've tested this with several customers, and it works. If you have finance liking your solution, if you have procurement liking your solution, if the CFO likes it because he's generally in charge of everything which has to do with money, you have a better chance of acceptance of your program, or at least getting funding for your program. The acceptance then comes by the logistics people. So what happens if you have a loss? You have many losses. Eventually you might have an insurance issue. You might have some discussions internally. The captive might be empty, meaning you have so many losses that your insurance, your little pocket you had for money is also empty. And then interesting thing happens. We call it a restructuring of an insurance program, which basically means we scrap the old one, we build a new one, and everybody is happy again. So then a new balance has to be found. They create stability again. You see some money shifting left and right. Most likely you will see another insurance company because the first one paid too much. So in the restructuring, they have to find another idiot to take the risk. And then everybody is happy again because there's financial stability. And that is, in the end, where if you're at ExCo level or you're in the CFO position, that is what they want, financial stability. So if you can present your program in such a way that you know where the risks are, you know what could be implemented to improve, and if you then say, by implementing all of these, we will have less losses, and such we will have more financial stability, they will love your program. And don't come up with an Excel sheet with 50 lines of risks, because they're senior management, they need Mickey Mouse language. So here's an example of how a policy could look like. You have a $10 million captive. So if 10 million means there's already skin in the game for the company for 10 million. Then there's a 50,000 dollars own deductible. So for each and every loss, the first 50,000 is not paid. Depending on the products that you ship, that could be a lot. If you have one loss a year, that's not really impressive. If you have multiple losses per year, per week, per day, 50,000 could be a lot of money. Particularly if you are talking to the person who has to pay the own deductible. Again, if the site manager is responsible for the losses and he has to pay 50,000 out of his own pocket, that's his P&L. In the end, it's his bonus. Because if you have a bad P&L, you don't get a bonus. And then there are, of course, mandatory security programs. We have an example for precious metals. You need increased security, which is demanded. They want to reduce the values in certain areas. That all has to be in place. We have had customers where the insurance department had the policy, the logistics people were not aware of the risks. They were not aware of what is written in the policy, and they were executing what they think would be the best solution. In the end, the security manager combined both and said, we're actually taking huge risks. We are not even following our insurance program. So if something is to happen, we don't even have coverage from our insurance program. So that's why as a security manager, you should first of all know who the insurance manager is. Hopefully you do know who is in charge of your insurance programs. Second of all, ask them a copy of the policy. Just read through it. If you don't understand them, ask them to explain what is written there. Insurance policies are things with very long sentences, comma, dot, comma, and then eventually you need to ask them, what is actually written here? Are we at risk or not? And how much is the risk? Once you know the risk, you can translate them into security because most security people are very good at what they do. You just need to understand what the risk is. Then there are some mandatory items also listed. You need to know what those are. And then, of course, it has to be audited internally. And then the maximum values, and the other rest is not really that big. There are some, of course, standard things about war, riots, and civil war exclusions. I think it would be good if you understood them, particularly if you're in countries which are not really that stable, and something might happen, because the moment it's been declared as a standard war, riot, or civil war, the insurance is not valid. So from that point of view, your job as a security manager becomes a whole lot more important because you have no safety net from the insurance company. And it also gives you an opportunity to go to senior management and say, listen, we are operating in country X. They have now riots, which would probably lead to a withdrawal from the insurance company. So anything which is out there in storage, in transport, has most likely no coverage. If your insurance colleague would then come with you in the meeting and say, yeah, he's right, well, then you have enough funding for your project because everything which is in that area is currently at risk. So what do we see if you have multiple thefts of good in a high-risk area as an example? What we do It could be that you have a company that has a structure in place, that you have a group insurance policy, and then each and every country is hanging under that policy. Now take an example, you have lots of good countries, we call them the green countries, and you have a few countries which are a bit more challenging. And just take as example, not to pick point, but South Africa and Mexico. These cause a lot of losses. And what the security manager or the insurance manager does not want is that the few losses that he has in two countries actually sort of screw up his entire program for the world coverage. So they start reducing the capability of the insurance company. So they will say, listen, certain products we don't want to have on the global coverage anymore. They're excluded, which is again, an opportunity for the security manager. Okay, that means no financial coverage from the insurance. It means more risk for the company, which has to be protected by the security manager. They can do it on a geographical level. They can exclude countries, certain trade lanes. They can do it on time level, as mentioned, the Brazil case, where you say no night, no weekend. And what most use is value. They just cut value. And we've had customers that really said, listen, by cutting the value in half, you are increasing my logistics cost by 50%. Yeah, it's one or the other. It's risk management. We have very good examples where the first reaction of the insurance company was that we are going to impose all of these requirements. So value reduction, geographical solutions, basically making it almost impossible for logistics to work. And then we had meetings with security, and security said, yeah, we could do all this, and this, and this, and then we would be in a more secure solution. But I mean, not really entirely secure, but we would have much less risk. We've had meetings then with the logistics people and say, the security guys actually have really good ideas. If you listen to them, we will take away the limitations on the cover. And that's why you could see that security people were able to implement the programs, got funding for it, because the insurance premium is only a peanut of the actual cost to getting a shipment from A to B. The logistics costs are much worse. So if you can reduce the logistics costs or make them even better, and then the insurance is a modus operandi to get there. You can convince customers, yeah, you maybe get a little insurance discount, but trust me, if you get like, I don't know, 50,000 euro discount on insurance premium and the savings on logistics are millions, talk to the guy who has the millions, not to the guy that can get 50,000 euro off the insurance premium. And then, of course, normally they can increase the premium. But that's something which insurance companies do. In the end, we're just like a casino. We never lose. So you pay just more premium. So at the end you have it could be an end of a relation. So if an insurance company decides to cut your insurance policy, it's mostly a trend because it's probably because we have given you more money than you have given us, which is not really a nice situation. So what do we do as a reaction? Already told a little bit about it. It has to be profitable. Still, risks have to be managed. And you want to avoid loss trends. Because if you have loss trends, the insurance company is not really there. If you have, I don't know, one incident a year, and it's been analyzed and it's out of your control. I don't know, a flood came and all the trucks that were on the road were washed away by the flood. Sorry, well, shit happens, that's why you have insurance. If you have 10 losses per week, and you know what's going on, but you don't do anything with it, and it keeps continuing, that's a loss trend. Insurance don't like trends. They're not there to cover trends, because in the end, as mentioned, you get more money from us than we from you. So if you're in the situation where you have loss trends, it's not really easy to find a new insurance company. So what generally then happens, they clean it up, they change the rate, they make limits, they implement new warranties, anything out of the ordinary. That's also where security could have a role, because if they need to clean up, they need to look good for the new insurance company. So that's also where you go, if you go to a new insurance company and say, yeah, this is our security plan. We've learned from the past, we've implemented some measurements, and now hopefully you would like to give us a new insurance. And all of that is until there is a new stable form of financial stability. And then everybody is happy again. So why do we think that supply chain is an enterprise risk? If you have any insurance for the marine part, it's called marine insurance, but we don't cover business interruption. So if you would lose something which is worth 100 euros, and you lost it, we would probably give you the 100 euros plus a little bit of logistics cost, that's it. If you were to sell it for 1,000, bad luck, we're not paying you the 900. It's not insured. So that's also a way where we have been able to convince many customers, security managers, to get funding for their budget, because they were always focused on the loss value. Yeah, I lost 100 euros. Oh, that's really bad. No. Look what you've lost in total. You've lost the profit, you've lost the customer, and take all that money into consideration when you are going to get funding for your program. So you know the internal risks, you know the losses, and eventually you should be able to convince senior management, listen, I'm not protecting this one shipment, I'm protecting our profitability of the company. That has been very successful with many customers. So in order to get to that, what is really important or not, you can ask yourself, would my company afford a loss? Will it kill us? If it won't kill you, it's a small loss, it's probably not really a business case you can present. If it is something which is like your new prototype for your future product, if it's a vital component which, if you don't have it, you can't produce, yeah, you can use that in the business case. I always say, if you lose a container of cornflakes, nobody cares. If you lose the prototype for the next version, people will care. And you can also then say, listen, for the container we just used cornflakes, we used the normal standard, but for these shipments I want more. And you can explain, because the value of that shipment for the company on the long term is much more than the containers of cornflakes. You can also ask, what's the lead time for a new batch? That's always really good. We currently have a customer that builds aggregates, really big, lumpy things. One fell off the road in Sweden a few months ago. They basically took the corner, but because there was snow on the way, on the road, they took the corner a bit slower than normal. And believe it or not, because they took the corner too slow, the center of gravity moved a little bit, and the whole 5-ton thing just flipped over. $5 million loss, oh, damn. They're insured, so we have to pay them the $5 million loss. However, internally they said, but yeah, we have a customer waiting for this thing. You can't pick it up anymore because it was just really damaged. And it takes 1.5 years to make a new one. So the customers are not happy. We could have done more with this one. You can also look, is it critical component? Is there a direct market for the product? I mean, if it's raw material and it's very hard to sell, it's less likely to be stolen. If you're selling finished products, you could again convince people to... And also important, are other industries using the same product? It might be a byproduct for your industry, but for other industries it might be very vital. So people will steal it from you because they will sell it to the other industries. I will skip this one because, Torsten, how long do I have? I'm already done. Oh, cool. Yeah. This is actually the last one, the real cost of loss, and that's already been mentioned several times. If you want to convince management, you have to figure out what the real cost of loss is. So if you're losing something at the beginning of the supply chain, figure out how much it should have been contributing to the end of the supply chain. And say, guys, I need to protect this little piece, which is not that of a value, but if we don't have it, we can't get there. And we can't earn the million because we don't have the component from the beginning. And there are lots of internal costs which you might want to use. So security is a business enabler, just as risk management and insurance. I know most of them don't see it like that, but if you actually start seeing them like that, it's going to be easier for your job. It also means you have a few more internal departments which are on the same side as you are. So get to know each other, at least figure out who it is, and try to learn each other's language, business language at least. Yeah, that was it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Björn. I don't know if there are any questions right now. You'll stay for the end, so any questions additional on the networking part? So next on our speaker list, under the title of Building Resilience Through Whistleblowing, we have Professor Natasha Holzhausen, I hope I have pronounced it correctly, from the University of Pretoria.